Okay, round 6 of the 2025 NRL season has now concluded. Some very interesting results. As I said last week, we now have every team's won at least one game. There's still only one unbeaten side, and that is the Bulldogs, because they had the bye this weekend. Some teams are having disastrous starts to the season. Other teams are having better than predicted starts to the season. And a lot of sides, well, everyone can beat everyone so far. So it's been a really thoroughly entertaining first month and a half of the season. So let's dive in. So the Dolphins-Panthers was the first game of the weekend up at Suncorp. The Dolphins win 30 points to 12. They've started to string some performances together. They've now leapfrogged the Panthers in the table. Tristan Wolf, his message is starting to get across with him as the head coach. It took a little while. There was some concerns at the start of the season that this could be a step backwards for them, but they've started to build those performances, got a couple of wins now. The Panthers, on the other hand, haven't won since Vegas, so it's 1-5. No team that's gone 1-5 has gone on to the grand final, so I think it's safe to say they won't be winning 5 in a row. We are going to have a different name on the Proven Summers Trophy at the end of the season. There are some things going seriously wrong at the Panthers, and the pressure is now on Ivan Cleary to find a solution. However, we have to start questioning some of the players they've let go through either their youth system or from their Elite 30. So some of the roster management needs to be looked at, but at the same time, their defence is the big concern. It's not the attack. Although this is their lowest scoring performance of the season so far. It's more their defence, because their defence has been their strength for 5.5, nearly 6 years since Ivan Cleary came in. Defensively, their numbers are very, very concerning. Very concerning. The system hasn't changed. There might be some personnel changes. The system hasn't changed. So that's an interesting one. They are in trouble. And they are one of the sides that I think I need to do a video on, looking at their attack and their defence and their for and against, and where things are going wrong and what the averages were last year to this year. Because they've been dominant for so long. There has been a lot of player turnover. I think 25, 26 players have been moved on since that first grand final against the Storm in 2020. That's basically a full squad of players has got filtered through the Panthers system in the last 5 years. It hasn't affected them until this point. So it's got to be more than that. It has to be more than that. Are some key players not fully fit? Has there been changes in the assisting coaching, with the assistants in regards to defence and attack? It cannot just be down on personnel changes, because the systems that they employ have not changed. So there's something going wrong at the Panthers there, and they now reached must-win territory to even make the 8 at this point. The Dragons-Titans was 38-16 to the Dragons. Really, really solid performance by the Dragons over the Titans down in Wollongong. These are two sides that are inconsistent. That's the frustrating thing with both these sides. We now know the Dragons can score points. They've been able to score points all season. The Titans, we know they are capable of scoring points. And it's just one of them where the Dragons get the win. On the day they were the better side, they had the better attack, although the Titans on their day, their attack is pretty lethal as well. It is literally two very frustrating sides to watch, because they're so inconsistent. The Dragons have beaten the Storm and the Titans this season and lost every other game, including losing to the Eagles and Golden Point. You could not make that up. The Titans lose 2, win 2, lose 2. So the Titans have now got a little bit of inconsistent consistency, if that makes any sense. It'll be interesting to see how these sides do going forwards in that regard when the origin period hits, to see how many players they're going to lose. That could be a period where they gain some ground on some other sides that will be more impacted as the season goes on. But two sides that I think are going to be around the 8 at the end of the season. We're only around 6. So in 20 weeks' time, we could be having a discussion of these two being around the 8. I think they both have that ability, but they're frustratingly inconsistent. But they haven't. Neither side's had a terrible defeat where they've really been blown out. So we shall see. But when both sides get their attack on, they're fun to watch. But defensively and game management-wise, you're always wondering, are they going to throw up a result like this? The Broncos-Roosters. The Broncos have... the Roosters have taken vengeance on the Broncos for that round 1 drubbing. They've won 26 points to 16 away from home at Suncorp. The Roosters just showed up. Now, you could argue a few lineup tweaks. Okay, there are some injuries. So Trent Robinson's having to tweak that lineup and that bench. There's a lot of young players around. The Broncos... no one expects the Broncos to win every game. But the way they started the season till now, you can sort of see, have they not say run out of steam, but have teams started to figure them out from that round one demolition of the Roosters. I think while it was a great game and the Roosters deserved to win, it has been overshadowed by the Spencer Leniu, Jonathan Thurston post-match war of words. Obviously, last year Spencer only gets that 8-week suspension for the Ezra Mam incident, which we've discussed at length on this channel. Then Ezra Mam obviously gets his suspension for his drug driving conviction. Again, that's been discussed at length on this channel. And Spencer Leniu has obviously been a bit critical of how Jonathan Thurston and some other members of the ex-playing group who've now gone into the media kind of role have been. It was a heated discussion on the sideline at full time. It then carried on in the tunnel when the teams have gone back to the dressing rooms. And what we do know is, some expletives were used, and of course we're all footy fans, so we know some F-bombs have been dropped. But Jonathan Thurston has, according to reports, made a complaint to the NRL and the Sydney Roosters. So we'll have to see if anything else comes of that, and if there's a suspension, fine, and investigation. I think it's been overblown, but it's still circulating on social media, and the fact that Jonathan Thurston and Channel 9 have put in a complaint to the NRL, we shall see what happens. So that is another thing that's overshadowed a Roosters-Broncos game, is a Spencer Leniu incident, but I don't think there's much in that. I think that's a very passionate player who's been heavily hammered in the media, and he's bit back a little bit, and he's criticised the media for double standards, and I think he's right to do that. But there are ways of doing it without getting that confrontational. There are ways of voicing your displeasure with how the mainstream media reports things, and this may not be the best way to do it. But I think that's overshadowed another Roosters-Broncos classic, in my opinion. The Sharks, Sea Eagles, 24 points to 18 to the Sharks. These are two other sides that are a little bit inconsistent, although the Sharks have responded well to that defeat in Vegas. I think they are a top 4, top 5 side. The Sea Eagles, without Tom Trbojevic, it's noticeable that win percentage does drop. They have had some more wins lately without Trbojevic in the side, but overall, since his debut, when he plays, the win percentage is in the high 60s, low 70s. When he doesn't play, it's in the mid 30s, and that's all time since he made his debut for the Sea Eagles. This is a match he doesn't play, they lose. The Sharks' game management could be a bit better. The Sea Eagles, they need to figure out a system and a way to win without Tommy Trbojevic, Turbo, in the side, because at some point he is going to move on or retire. We know this. And this is a psychological thing with the Sea Eagles. There are some really good, talented young outside backs. And Tom Trbojevic's fitness is going to be an ongoing issue for the Sea Eagles. If they are to make the top 8, top 4, they're going to have to figure out a better way of playing without him in the side on a more long-term basis, be it through the origin period or through a regular season when he's not there and finals when he's not there. So these are two sides that I think are going to be top 8 sides. They both have got real quality attacks, although the Sea Eagles lately have started to show some weaknesses. A couple of really average performances, especially in first halves. Their first halves were brilliant until last week. This week, again, that first half wasn't great. They showed a little bit more fight, as the Sharks' game management still isn't perfect, but I think the Sea Eagles, they need to put in an 80-minute performance from somewhere, because that's, I think, one thing that's holding them back. The Rabbitohs Cowboys. Now, this was game 2 in Perth. The Perth doubleheader. The Cowboys winning 24 points to 16. The Cowboys, when they lost those first 3 matches to start the season, people are thinking this season's going to get away from them. Todd Payton under pressure. They've now won 3 in a row. Jackson Purdue as a young centre. I know Labert's injured, but that's going to be interesting when Labert's fully fit. 2 very young, talented centres going to be competing for a role in the side when Labert is fit enough to really compete again. That's going to be fun, which is a nice problem to have. But they've also won 3 in a row, and they're starting to build that confidence. So the Cowboys, I think, could be a bit of a sleeper. I mean, when they won in 2015, they had a poor start to the season. I think they lost the first 4 matches to start the season that year. They went on to the grand final and win, obviously, in Golden Point. The Bunnies, interesting one. Very interesting, the Bunnies, because they've played better as a whole to start this season than was expected. Obviously, Wayne Bennett's had that impact. Latrell Mitchell in the halves doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Yes, he's got some good soft hands, and he did create a little bit. I think it was a try he created, but overall, it doesn't work in attack or defence on a 80-minute match. He's not a fullback either. He is a centre. I understand the emergency reasons because Lewis Dodd's suspended, and they had to get him in there, but it doesn't work. You expect someone of Latrell Mitchell's size and physicality to run the ball a lot, and he didn't. And so an expected strength wasn't used, and I think that did hamper the Bunnies in attack a little bit. It just didn't look right. It didn't flow right. And the Cowboys, they are starting to build some momentum. The Bunnies have had a very good start to the season. This is a litmus test. They're coming up against a team that's, building a bit of confidence and a head of steam. And I do think on paper the Cowboys are a better team than the Bunnies, personally. And with the way the Cowboys have responded to that, losing the first 3 matches of the season, that is the pressure on Todd Payton. And I think they're going to be a top 8 side. The Bunnies, we shall see if they end up being a top 8 side. Because I think they have got a lot of injuries which are going to hamper them. And some of these players haven't got a lot of NRL first grade experience. And when they have a defeat like this, it's going to be how they respond as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they do in following rounds following this defeat. The Eels against the Raiders up in Darwin, the annual Darwin match for the Eels. The Raiders 50, the Eels 12. This is the second match this season where the Eels have shipped 50 points. Jason Riles is under pressure at this point. There's got to be question marks over their roster management and player development and signings. The Raiders, a lot of people expected the Raiders to miss the 8, to struggle this season. The way the Raiders have performed so far this season, even in defeat, they've had a couple of defeats. You expect that with the young side has been really, really impressive. As a Raiders fan, they're doing better than I expected them to do. The Eels, I don't know where to go with the Eels. They get that golden point win against the Dragons. You think, it could be the start of something. Just a little bit of confidence. We know the Eels aren't going to make the top 8, but at least they can scrap and fight. And they were showing signs in the previous couple of games as well that the confidence was building and they were buying into Jason Riles' rebuild. Yeah, I don't know where the Eels go from here, but I think it's safe to say that they're going to be fighting to avoid the wooden spoon this season. They are just not on the same page as the rest of the league. Quite honestly, they're not on the same page as the rest of the league. The golfing class between the Eels and everyone else is very noticeable at this point. The Raiders, though, for their part, they adapted well to the very hot, humid conditions, which I was a bit concerned about, and they put in a fantastic performance. And Ricky Stewart, I think, can be credited with a very good pre-season and really galvanising this young team. There's been a lot of player turnover. They've lost a lot of experience. And these young players have responded and have no fear. So the way they're playing, I think they're probably going to make the top 8. Defensively, a lot better than last season as well, which was a concern that defensively that was a weakness. I think the Raiders will do quite well this season. I really do. The Storm Warriors, 42 points to 14 down in Melbourne, Amy Park. It was a sold-out Amy Park because the AFL's got it there. Gather round in Adelaide, so there's no AFL in Melbourne this weekend. So the Storm have taken full advantage of that by selling a lot of tickets and selling out their home ground. The Storm are, they're backing up the credentials of the pre-season favourites. They've only had the one defeat so far this season. Very solid start to the season. They started with a thumping win over the Eels. That one defeat to the Dragons, okay, there was a few weaknesses exposed. They do have a few, areas where I think they're not perfect, but the way the team is playing, and even with injuries to some key players, they're still playing quite well. Their depth players show up every week and do a role for them. They've got role players. I think they've got to keep Munster, Hughes and Pappenhausen fit. I think that's where some of the other issues over recent seasons is the fitness of their spine. If Pappenhausen and Hughes especially stay fit, because they're the ones who've had the most injury concerns, I think they'll be okay. And the system is a well-proven system. They obviously made the grand final last year. They were minor premiers last year, and they've been one of the most consistent teams over the last 20 years. Craig Bellamy and the systems he's put in place, the recruitment, player development, the scouting, the roster management, the systems in attack and defence. They are fully living up to the billing of favourites this year. The Warriors have this in them where they do have the odd dud defeat. Their record against the Storm isn't great in recent years. They've had the occasional classic against the old Storm, but their record against the Storm in recent years isn't great reading. But it's a disappointing defeat. But again, every side has a defeat like this in them. So far this season, every team has proven they can beat anyone. Only one team, as I say, remains unbeaten, and that is the Bulldogs, and they had the bye. So, there's been some really interesting results. There have been some shocks. There have been some sides really performing really badly, whose seasons are already, derailing themselves, which leads us on to the Knights and the Tigers. The Tigers win 20 points to 4 away from home up in Newcastle. They obviously lost opening night 8-10. They've avenged that quite well. The Knights, until the last minute, looked likely to be shut out for back-to-back weeks. And the Knights have the lowest average score in attack. They're averaging the fewest points scored, and their defence, they're leaking more points than they score as well. The Knights are one of those teams that are in trouble, I think. After winning the first 2 rounds of the season in 2 close games, they haven't won. So they're on a bit of a losing streak. And there's some worrying signs up in Newcastle. The Tigers, look, I think the Tigers are definitely a much improved side. You can see the confidence in the team. You can see that Benji Marshall's message is getting across. They're not the finished article. I think there's still room for more improvement with this Tigers side. I think that they're still building into something. Whether they make the 8 this year or not is debatable. We'll see what they do in the coming weeks. If they can build some momentum, then absolutely they can make the top 8. There's nothing to say they can't, but I think that might be a season or two too soon. But they're definitely building something in Western Sydney now. Benji Marshall's definitely got the team playing better. It took a while, but the defence is far improved. The confidence with the team is far improved. And they're willing to try stuff. Even when they're like 20-0 up, they're still willing to experiment and try things in attack. And even in defeat, they're still scoring points. There's a confidence about this young side and a bravery about this young side that's been lacking for so many years. They're willing to try stuff and play with no fear, which is refreshing. So the Tigers are much improved this season, and I think they're going to be challenging for the top 8. Whether they make the top 8, we shall see, but they've been fun to watch so far. As I say, the Bulldogs had the bye this weekend, so they are still the only unbeaten side left in the competition. And I will have to do a video on the Panthers because their shocking start to the season is starting to raise some alarm bells up in Penrith. I think it is safe to say they will not be defending their premiership. They will not be winning 5 in a row. No side has gone 1-5 to start the season and made a grand final. They've just given up too much ground to their rivals. They're second bottom right now on the ladder, so their season's basically unravelled already within the first month and a half. Whereas sides like the Cowboys, for example, they've started to build some momentum. The Raiders have had a better than expected start to the season. The Sharks have been pretty solid to start the season. The Broncos have had a really good start. Couple of bad defeats, however. The Rabbitohs, for example, again, better than expected start to the season. Whereas sides like the Knights, they've been poor. The Eels have been shocking. The Roosters, okay, they've had 2 unexpected underdog wins against the Panthers and the Broncos, but the Roosters have been poor to start the season as well. So there's some really interesting storylines coming out, and then there's sides like the Cowboys who are just bang average, 3-3 to start the season, and so it's already becoming a very interesting ladder. As I say, everyone's won at least one game, and the Bulldogs are the only undefeated side. So there we go. That's round 6 in the books. Place your thoughts on how the weekend went, and we will preview round 7 in the coming days. But from me for now, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.